Hello, Mary.
Hello, Ben, is it?
It's Jesse here. Hi, how are you?
Oh, it's Jesse. Good, thanks. How are you?
We've met before, Mary.
Somebody said I was going to speak to Ben.
Yeah, we've got a complex chain of command here, but Ben's passed you on to me, and great to have you on. Mary's in once a fortnight to talk about a different aspect of personal finances, and you're on KiwiSaver today, but an aspect of KiwiSaver that I reckon a lot of people won't have even thought about, Mary.
That's right. On the sorted KiwiSaver tools, they look at fees, which I've always said is perhaps the main thing you should look at when you're choosing which KiwiSaver provider. And they also look at returns, and if only we could know what future returns were, that would be brilliant. But looking at past returns is a bit iffy because they can change a lot. And the third thing they look at is the sort of quality of services that KiwiSaver providers offer their members, but not much fuss is made about that. But I was recently talking to a guy at the Retirement Commission who does that twice a year. They do a survey of providers and ask them various questions about what different services they offer.
Yeah,
and asked him to send me some information about which providers are doing what. And there's some really quite interesting services some of them offer that I think people might not be aware you can get.
Yeah, if you weren't with one of these providers, you wouldn't know what you were missing.
That's right. And yet some of these features could be really quite helpful to certain people. And I also kind of hope by publicising a little bit more the fact that this research is done, to encourage providers who are not doing very well to turn up the knob a bit and give a bit slightly better services. But
sounds good. They wouldn't all be. Sorry to interrupt. They wouldn't all be super costly for them to offer, right?
That's right. A lot of them, not really. I would think some of them. I've got no idea what some of them will cost, but there's quite a lot of them are around communications, which can't be that difficult, really.
Yeah.
And so at the end of this, I was going to tell you which providers overall score well and which ones do badly. But I wanted to just look first at a few specific services that I think could be of interest to listeners, and they might not realise they get them.
Yeah.
One of them is providers are asked whether they look at their members and see if they're likely to contribute less than $1,043 a year by the end of June. Because then if they're going to be putting in less than that from the previous July 1, then they won't get the maximum amount from the government.
Mm-hmm.
And most providers do have a look at that in June, it would be, and get in touch with their members and say, hey, if you don't get some money in soon, you're not going to get the maximum from the government. But not everybody does that. So the ones that don't, because there's only a short list of 4 of them, are Invest Now and Kernel. They're both quite new providers. Life Stages and Super Easy. So they're not big providers, or they're growing, some of them, but they're and I have to say some of these new ones might just not have got round to offering some of these services yet. But anyway, if you're in anything other than those, then rest assured that you will be nudged.
Good one.
Yeah,
and it's a great point, isn't it? Because I don't know any of those. So this is not a comment on those accounts in particular, but get the basics right first, right? Before you offer something that is unique and innovative and groundbreaking. Make sure that people are getting that 50% return on the first $1,000 that they're putting in
each year. That's right. Yes, and that's everybody, not just employees. That's everybody. Another couple of questions that would affect people when downturns come, when the share markets and bond markets fall. One of them, providers are asked whether they have a formal plan to tell members when fund returns go down, to communicate with them and say, hey, look, your returns have gone down, but here's what's going on, and don't panic, and suggest you don't move funds at that point. And most providers do that. They plan to communicate to members and say to them, hey, don't worry, everybody, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
But the ones that don't, and the one that surprised me was RNZ. I was like, gosh, they're one of the bigger providers, and they don't have a plan, or that's what they told the Retirement Commission to do this, to notify members to stand by and things will come right. And the others that don't offer this service are Invest Now, Life Stages, and Simplicity, which is one that gets a lot of publicity, but they actually fall a bit short on services. Simplicity.
How did you measure this, by the way? How would you know how they're communicating to clients when funds fall?
They're just asked by the Retirement Commission, sends out a survey every 6 months, and that's one of the questions. Do you have a formal plan to do this, to communicate? And those ones are the ones that answered no.
Very interesting.
So, yeah. And then another one related to when the markets go down is if a member asks to switch from one fund to another, does the provider offer them some guidance on the impact of that switch? And that, would apply so if someone's reducing their risk, and especially when there's been a market downturn lately, most of the providers will get in touch with them and say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's not a good idea to be reducing your risk at a time when the markets are down. And some people will reply and say, no, that's not why I'm doing it. It's because I'm planning to buy a house soon or whatever. But it's good for the providers to get in touch and tell them what's going on. And everybody does that, but Invest Now, Nico, Pathfinder, Summer, and Super Easy, most of which are somewhat smaller providers. They're the ones that don't offer that guidance on the impact of switching funds. So that's the one point against them.
I'm just going to jump in for a moment, Mary. One little note for you. You're starting to sound a little muffled. I just want to make sure that you're speaking directly into the mouthpiece of your landline. And for our listeners today who are playing Link 3, I cannot see a correct answer. So I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to give you a clue. And I'm going to encourage you to look at the singers of the songs that we've heard so far. The singers are your key to unlocking our Link 3 riddle today. Chris Martin in Coldplay, David Lee Roth in Van Halen, and Peter Tosh, who we just heard after 3 o'clock today. So Mary is looking at what services different KiwiSaver providers offer, who offers what and who doesn't. So we were talking about the guidance on the impact of switching there. And then the idea of being in more than one fund. That is a service of sorts, isn't it?
Yes, it is. For some people, it matters a lot. And now we're not talking about being with more than one provider. You're not allowed to be. You've got to be with just one company. But you can, in most cases, be in more than one of their funds. And so for a lot of people, that doesn't actually matter. But for two groups, really, it does matter. One is for nervous people who are in a low-risk fund because they're nervous, but they're actually long-term investors. Can you still hear me? The phone's going funny.
I can hear you. Yeah, it's not the clearest line in the world, but when you started talking there, again, it was better. So, as I say, just be aware of where the mouthpiece is and we'll persevere, yeah.
Sure, yes, it's something funny. Anyway, hopefully we keep going. So yes, you want to be in more than one fund if you're nervous and you're saying, I'm in low risk because I can't bear the thought of my balance going down, even though I've got many years before I'm going to be spending the money. So for people in that situation, I often encourage them to just put, say, a quarter of their money into a higher risk fund and watch the volatility that happens, because it'll be more volatile, but over the long haul it'll grow more. And if you just put a little bit of your money in there and then gradually perhaps add more and more, because in the long run you'll end up with more, that's one way to kind of, rather than going the whole hog and moving the whole lot. So you've obviously got to be with a provider that will let you do that. And then the other is people who are over, say, 50-ish who are wanting to start planning spending in retirement. And for them, which we talked about before, they want, as they're nearing their spending, to put the money they're going to spend soon in low-risk funds, and then the longer-term money in middle risk, and then the very long-term money in high risk. And so they need to be able to be in more than one fund. Now, there are 3 providers only who don't let you be in more than one fund, and those are a small one called AE, and then Juno and Simplicity is in that group. And then there are a lot of providers that will let you be in more than one fund, but they won't let you withdraw from only one fund. I mean, the ideal is that you can be in more than one fund, any number of funds you want to be in, and that you can say, I want to take some money out, this will be in retirement or to buy a first home, and I want to take it out from only one of my funds. And there are some providers that won't let them do that. They say, no, we're going to take, if you're in 3 different funds and you want to take $100 out, we'll take 33 out of each of your funds for you. And you say, no, I want the whole 100 to come out of the low-risk one. And so the providers that don't let you do that don't let you specify where you can withdraw, AE, Juno and Simplicity, who won't even let you be in more than one fund, and then RNZ is on that list, which is the biggest provider of all.
Gosh.
Yes, and it's time they changed that, I would say. And then some other fairly big ones called Booster, Kernel, Kiwi Wealth, that's a big one, Kura, MAS, and One Answer, which is another pretty big one. All of those will not let you specify which fund you want your withdrawals coming from. And I would encourage them to change that. And I would encourage listeners who are approaching retirement or want to be in more than one fund because they're nervous and want to practice being in a higher risk fund, I would encourage them to move from those providers if they won't let you do that, because others will, most will, and it's something that should be available. Now, looking overall...
Now stand by, Mary. I don't have a link 3 correct answer yet, and so I'm going to give the biggest clue of all. And then I'll give people the text number, because you're about to work this out and win link 3 for the first time in your life. So the text number is... Oh, you got someone, Sally? Okay, no, too late. We reckon we might have gotten a correct answer through. So, Mary, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay, so having a look at... overall, when you look at the whole survey, and there's about 60 questions in there, there's one provider that does best of all, and that's one called RNZ Funds, which is not terribly well known, but they are the king and queen of services to members. And then,
good for them.
Yes, and close on their heels, we've got ASB, Booster, Fisher, and Milford in alphabetical order. So those are they're the silver medals. And then we've got one tier below that I'll also mention. The ones that do pretty well are AMP, Generate, Kiwi Wealth, MAS, Superlife, and Westpac. So all of those that I've just mentioned all do well with services for members.
Uh-huh.
And the worst ones, the ones that do the bottom of the list, are Juno, Sharesies, and Super Easy.
Interesting.
And then, there's also in the next tier of ones that don't do well are Invest Now, Kernel, Life Stages, and Simplicity. So I would encourage members of those ones that are not doing well to perhaps get in touch with their provider, particularly if there's a service that I've mentioned or other services they'd like and they're not getting, and say, hey, I'm going to move from you if you can't clean up your act. And, okay, a lot of times the providers might say, well, I don't really care about one person, but they shouldn't. They should say this is feedback that, might apply to a lot of people. So, I mean, I think members can make a difference there. So, finally, just to tell you, if you want information about which providers are doing well on services, on the KiwiSaver Fund finder on sorted. So you go to that and you have to fill it out about your age and how much you're contributing, etc. And then you get through to a list of funds at your risk level, and you can get information there on what comes up as fees, is the funds at your risk level ranked by fees. But you, at the top left-hand corner, instead, you can change it to ranked by services or ranked by return. So have a play around on the KiwiSaver Fund Finder to get information about that. It's an interesting area, I think, that gets neglected too much.
Great session, Mary. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Jesse. Bye.
Mary Holm, personal finance expert. You can listen to that entire session or any of Mary's previous sessions by heading to our podcast page at rnz.co.nz.